What's going on, everybody? Well, Spider-Man Homecoming is finally upon us. My full review is up on my channel right now if you want to check that out, or you can probably just click over here. I'll put a card up. But the past 15 years, we have gotten 3 different incarnations of Spider-Man. I'm a huge fan of the character of Spider-Man, grew up loving the character, playing the video games, reading some of the comics, so I've got some very strong opinions on the movies, and I will go ahead and warn you now, this will probably be a very controversial list, but what do you expect? This is a Cody Leach ranking. It's always controversial. So, kicking it off with number 6, the bottom of the barrel for me, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I am not a fan of this movie in the slightest. When I first saw it in theaters, I had big expectations because a movie that I'm going to talk about here shortly left me wanting a lot more. And I thought that Amazing Spider-Man 2 was going to deliver that and finally bring me around to this remake incarnation of The Amazing Spider-Man starring Andrew Garfield, directed by Mark Webb, and everything in this movie just falls on its face. Everything that I didn't like about Amazing Spider-Man is still here. The villains are even worse, so campy. Like Jamie Foxx, I'm already not a big fan of the guy, but his version of Electro, which might not even be his fault, maybe it's just the writing or the directing, is horrible. It's so campy and over the top and cheesy. And Electro is an awesome villain. You know, that's finally, it's a villain that we have not seen on the screen yet when he came. And it was just ridiculous. You got Paul Giamatti, who's a great actor, playing a horrible Rhino. The version of Green Goblin that we got was just shoehorned in and fast-forwarded and ridiculous. Everything about this movie is trash to me. I've rewatched it probably twice since I've seen it in theaters. I was lukewarm on it when I saw it in theaters, really disliked it the second time that I watched it. I'll probably never rewatch it again, to be honest with you. It's just not for me at all, and I'm glad that they kind of chopped that series in half with a sword whenever Sony kind of got their deal with Marvel, and we don't get any more of these trash Amazing Spider-Man movies. So, Amazing Spider-Man 2, not a fan of it. That's number 6. Number 5, The Amazing Spider-Man. Again, everybody was bitching that this was too soon for a remake, and they were right, but this funny thing happened, is that The Amazing Spider-Man came out, and everything that they tried to do new was just lateral moves. You know, it was darker and a little bit more emotional because that was kind of the trend with the Dark Knight trilogy. Everything had to be dark. It was in that little era of superhero movies. Andrew Garfield's fine, but honestly, I love the guy as an actor. Like, he was in Hacksaw Ridge and was phenomenal, a couple other things, but I just don't like his version of Spider-Man or Peter Parker at all. He's just a total douchebag. Spider-Man's supposed to have a little bit of jokiness to him and a little bit smartass to him, but he's not supposed to be unlikable, and Andrew Garfield's just unlikable to me. The only thing that's good about this movie, which is actually a positive in Amazing Spider-Man 2, is the chemistry between Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, because they were a real-life couple while these movies were going on, so obviously they're going to have chemistry. So that was really the only thing that Mark Webb and the Amazing Spider-Mans did a little bit better than the Raimi trilogy to me, is that romantic interest, because the connection between those two, between Emma Stone's character of Gwen Stacy and Spider-Man, is a little bit better than what we got from Mary Jane and Spider-Man in the Raimi trilogy, but the villain, the Lizard, not really pulled off very well at all, which is another villain that we had not seen on screen yet. They were building up Dylan Baker for 3 movies to finally play him. Never got to see it, and when we did get to see it, it was just disappointing to me. The action was decent enough. I like Dennis Leary in it, but just everything was a lateral move. They changed Uncle Ben's death, and it wasn't nearly as good, nearly as impactful. They changed it from, you know, the embedded web shooters to the digital, or the little mechanical web shooters, which really doesn't change anything. They changed his suit, which I didn't really like the way his suit looked. Just, I can nitpick this movie all day long. I'm just not a fan of the Amazing Spider-Man movies. I can rewatch the first one. I probably will eventually if I'm in a little Spider-Man marathon mood, but it's still not a very good movie to me, so that's number 5. Number 4, time to start the controversy, baby. Spider-Man Homecoming. This is the one that we just got. This is the big collaboration between Sony and Marvel. And while I do enjoy this movie, I do consider it a good Spider-Man movie, to me, it was disappointing because I was expecting greatness, because this thing's got like a 93 on Rotten Tomatoes. You already got so many people calling this the best Spider-Man movie we've ever gotten, which is a tall order for me because I love the Raimi films. And even though I love Tom Holland as Peter Parker and Spider-Man, I loved Michael Keaton as the Vulture. Maybe it's just Michael Keaton, my fandom for that guy that's making me love it so much, but I really think he was a great villain. I think it's one of the best Marvel Cinematic Universe villains we've gotten so far. I love the twist with the character. I think Michael Keaton was really intimidating and yet charming and entertaining. I think that the action set pieces were decent enough, but some of them were just kind of there. They were kind of retreads of what we've already seen in this franchise of Spider-Man movies, and also they were kind of shot a little bit weird in some spots where he's jumping around and moving around so quick that you can't quite tell what's going on. I think that they integrated it into the MCU and integrated Tony Stark really well, but there's one character, Flash Thompson, that I could not stand the entire time. And speaking of characters, they really screw with comic book lore and who these characters are at their core in this movie. It's like they're trying to make some kind of a mishmash between the Miles Morales Spider-Man universe and the Peter Parker Spider-Man universe. And they're really inserting a ton of Miles Morales stuff, but just calling them by the names of the Peter Parker characters. Like Flash Thompson is not Flash Thompson. You got Zendaya's character, small spoiler alert, she is MJ, but she's not Mary Jane. So obviously that's going to take the place of Mary Jane, but why call her MJ? Why not just give her a different name? Then you got characters like Betty Brant who shows up in this. You got the Scorpion who shows up in this, which is the Miles Morales Scorpion, not the Peter Parker Scorpion. Just a lot of weird shit if you're a big comic book nerd that just is glaringly weird when you watch this movie and kind of disrespectful to a degree, because at the end of the day, comic book fans are why these movies exist, and it's kind of a slap in the face whenever you start playing around with what they originally loved about these characters. So I enjoy Spider-Man Homecoming, but does not quite measure up to the next three in this list to me, so that's why it's number 4. Number 3, the movie that many people will put at the bottom of this list, or at least right up from the bottom, is Spider-Man 3. Now, I will go on record right now. Spider-Man 3 is miles better than people give it credit for. It's kind of become popular to bash this movie. Now, don't get me wrong, this movie has some problems, but it's still a damn good movie. It's the weakest of the trilogy that Sam Raimi did by far, but it's still a damn good movie. After this movie came out, especially after the first Amazing Spider-Man came out, it just kind of became internet bandwagon to just hate this movie and just, Spider-Man 3 is the worst movie ever. Spider-Man 3 is garbage. It's unwatchable. It's absolute trash. And you know what? I will argue that this movie is great until the day that I die. I still love it. Yes, Venom is shoehorned in. There was a lot of drama where Sony wanted to put Venom in this movie and have that storyline, the Black Suit Spider-Man, be the entire story of this. Sam Raimi stuck to his guns. He wanted to do Sandman. And to be honest with you, as much as I love Raimi, he should have shut up and just did what Sony wanted. Because what he did with Sandman, even though Sandman was great, played by, I forget the actor's name, but he played him really pretty damn good. And I don't like the fact that he kind of changed the lore of having Sandman actually kill Uncle Ben. That's the one gigantic flaw in this movie that I do not forgive it for. But it would have worked better if it was just solely a black suit Spider-Man and then eventually Venom in this movie. It would have been a lot more coherent. People say there's too many villains. I actually don't think that there's too many. I just think that they don't balance it very well. They try to give too much gravity to Sandman, and they try to take too much away from Venom, and everybody wanted to see Venom. Sony knew that. I don't think that the Green Goblin that we got in this, the little new Goblin that they call him, was a bad villain at all. I actually think that was a good progression for James Franco's character of Harry Osborn. And I just love the theme of this movie is forgiveness. You know, all of the Sam Raimi movies have a theme to them, and I'll get into those here in a second, but this one is around forgiveness. It's about Harry Osborn learning to forgive Peter Parker. It's about Peter Parker learning to forgive Sandman for what he did, because they kind of make Uncle Ben's death an accident, which again, I don't really like it, but they do make it work well towards the end of the movie. You know, it's about Mary Jane learning to forgive Peter Parker, and I just think that the movie really ties that together really well. Even though I wish we would have got a fourth movie, the direction that Sam Raimi was going to go with a fourth movie was ridiculous, and it just would have caused more problems. So it is good that it ended here. I think it's a good ending for the trilogy. Again, Venom could have been a lot better, should have been a lot better, but I think as long as the scene doesn't actually show Mr. 70 Show's face, Topher Grace, I think Venom does still entertain. He still looks cool. He's still intimidating and scary in a few spots. As long as the little webbing doesn't come off and show his face, I'm entertained by Venom. So I really love this movie. I will defend it till the day I die. I really enjoy the hell out of it. And it just nudges out Spider-Man Homecoming for me, because the errors in Spider-Man Homecoming are more offensive to me than the errors in Spider-Man 3. And that's why Spider-Man 3 is my number 3. Number 2, down to the last two, and obviously it's going to be between the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man and his sequel Spider-Man 2. And the movie that is just not good enough to make my number 1 is the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man. I remember when this movie first came out, it was a huge thing. I mean, people were building it up forever. Everybody was so excited, and I got to go see this the first weekend that it came out, and I absolutely loved it. This was one of the big pioneer movies that kind of made comic book movies start to really blow up. You know, we had Blade, we had X-Men, and we had Spider-Man. Those are kind of the three big ones. And Spider-Man to me is just so enjoyable. It has its own flavor to it, which is what I really enjoy about the Sam Raimi movies. They have their own identity. They don't feel like every other movie that comes out, which is another kind of small negative of Spider-Man Homecoming. It just fits that Marvel Cinematic Universe formula so much that it feels a lot like other movies that we've already seen. The Sam Raimi movies are total Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. They don't feel like anything else, and nothing else feels like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. I really loved Peter Parker and Tobey Maguire. I really think that he's a really sympathetic and a really enjoyable and a really emotional Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's an emotional character, so I've always loved Tobey Maguire's take on this character. I really like Mary Jane in this movie. She's got some issues in 3 and a few issues in 2 where she starts to become a little bit whiny and a little bit too damsel in distress, but she's perfect in this movie. This is the best Mary Jane that we've ever gotten and probably will ever get. I think that Harry Osborn, played by James Franco, is awesome. I think that the villain, Green Goblin, Norman Osborn, played by Willem Dafoe, is a great villain, even though it's a little bit campy here and there just because of the way that the suit looks, or like when he's flying around, the itsy bitsy spider. There's a few campy elements there, but that's Sam Raimi. This is the guy that made the Evil Dead movies, so it makes sense within the context of this movie. But I think he's a great villain. He's scary, he's intimidating. I love his little bipolar and his little split personality thing that he has going on, where he's really caring and scared, and then he's evil and maniacal. I just love this movie. The action sequences are great. There's so many things about this original Spider-Man movie that there's a reason why this is one of the pioneers that kicked off the superhero craze, because there's so many things that's so iconic about this. So this is a movie I will constantly rewatch. My kids rewatch it. They love it. You know, my grandkids will love it. This is a movie that's just iconic for me, and that's why it's my number 2. But there's one movie that's better than that one, and that is his sequel, Spider-Man 2. Now, in my top 5 comic book movies of all time that I did with Durbin from Durbania, I'm pretty sure this was my number 3. Spider-Man 2, my number 3 greatest comic book movie of all time. I love everything about this sequel. It totally expands and builds upon what the first one made as far as the drama between Peter Parker trying to figure out how he can be Spider-Man but still be Peter Parker at the same time. There's a part in the movie where he actually gives up being Spider-Man and just starts to focus on his own life, which is really dramatic. Like whenever he's walking down the street and he sees somebody getting their ass kicked in an alley, and he turns around and he knows that he wants to save him, but he walks away and makes the decision not to be Spider-Man anymore. A lot of really great emotional moments like that in this one. Like whenever he's basically telling Mary Jane, I don't love you, I can't be with you. Like scenes like that, you just feel the pain inside Peter Parker, because he wants nothing more than to be with Mary Jane, but he knows because he loves her so much, he can't be with her because he's going to put her in danger. Just so many things like that, that's what's missing in the Homecoming for me. And again, just keep talking about Homecoming because it's the new one. The depth and the emotion just wasn't there when it's just pliable everywhere in the Raimi trilogy. I love the villain. This is the best Spider-Man villain we've ever gotten on screen. Dr. Octopus, played by Alfred Molina. Incredible. Could not have cast that role better, could not have written that role better. The special effects on his arms and his tentacles are awesome. You get that great fight on top of that subway train, or the monorail train, and then you get the awesome sequence right after that whenever he's trying to web it and try to stop the train from going out of control. You get a lot of great drama between Peter Parker and Harry Osborn in this, which is really building up to what he becomes in the third one, with his just growing hatred for Spider-Man and his growing pain that his friend, Peter Parker, his best friend, won't help him kill Spider-Man, obviously since he's the same person. Like, there's so many great dramatic things going on in this movie that it all just fires on all cylinders. This is damn near a flawless movie to me. Even the little goofy sequence whenever he's walking around, raindrops falling on my head, that's kind of like the dancing scene in Spider-Man 3 that everybody harps on, but I still love that scene. It's a nice little moment of levity. It's funny. It's a little bit goofy. And again, that's just Sam Raimi. If you love Sam Raimi and you understand him as a filmmaker, everything that he did in Spider-Man 2 and everything that happened in Spider-Man 3 makes sense. And Spider-Man 2, again, just without repeating myself 1,000 times, is one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. It's the best of the Sam Raimi trilogy, and it's the best Spider-Man movie that we've ever gotten. That's why it is my number 1 best Spider-Man film of all time. So what do you guys think about my ranking for the Spider-Man franchise? I'm sure 90% of you have a wildly different list. Post all of your rankings down below, because I'm really curious on where all these movies fall for all of you. Go ahead and comment on the choices that I made as far as the placement of Spider-Man 3 and Homecoming, because I'm sure that's going to be the controversial section of this review. Put all your thoughts on the Spider-Man movies down below, guys, and we'll talk about it. Please like and share this video, and hit that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. That way you get to come back and check out my future content. And if you want to check out my social media links down below, I've got Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and my Patreon page, which is a great way to support this channel, as well as get a lot of exclusive content for yourself and be a part of what I do next. You can actually choose your own movie for me to review if you become a patron, so go ahead and check that out, guys. And if you want to check out some more of my videos, you can check out a few more by clicking right over here.